Disclaimer: this video is AI generated for infotainment only. Data sourced from the internet. AI may hallucinate. Verify all facts independently.
Picture a house of lawmakers elected, seated part of a state's legislature. Now picture it simply erased, voted out of existence. It is not hypothetical. Tamil Nadu built such a house, then abolished it before it ever held a single sitting. Pradesh created one, killed it, and then 20 years later brought it back from the dead. This is the Legislative Council, a chamber of lawmaking whose very life hangs on the will of another house. The only legislature in India that can be switched off. Welcome to the state legislature, where a state's laws are born in a house divided against itself. Chapter 33. The state legislature. Just as the union has its parliament, every state has its own legislature, the place where the laws that govern your daily life are actually written. The constitution lays it out across 45 articles from 168 to 200. Like parliament, a state legislature can have two houses. But here is the surprise: most don't. Out of 28 states, only 6 have a second chamber. The rest run on a single house. Where there are 2, they mirror the center. The lower house, the Legislative Assembly, the Vidhan Sabha, is the popular house directly elected by you and Supreme. The upper house, the Legislative Council, the Vidhan Parishad, is the house of second thought. Directly elected, smaller, weaker. In the 6 states that have one, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Telangana, and Andhra Pradesh, it sits above the assembly in name and far below it in power. One house the people choose, one house they mostly don't. That gap is the whole story of this chapter. A head who sits in these houses and how. The house that can be made to vanish, the law that lets a speaker decide who keeps their seat, and how a bill becomes a state's law, with one house always winning. But first, the people's house, and a 50-year-old freeze on its very size that is about to expire in 2026. Part 2. Start with the people's house, the assembly. Its members are chosen the way you'd expect. Directly elected one representative for a patch of the state called a constituency. Its size tracks population from as few as 60 seats to as many as 500. Uttar Pradesh, the largest, has 403. After every census, those seats are meant to be redrawn, so each represents roughly the same number of people. That redrawing has a name, delimitation, except it hasn't happened in 50 years. Back in the 1970s, the government froze the number of seats at the 1971 census level. The reason was clever and fair. States that worked hard to control their population should not lose seats to states that hadn't. That freeze was extended and extended again, and it holds until the first census after the year 2026. The clock is now running out. Here is the time bomb. When the freeze finally lifts and seats are redrawn by today's population, the fast-growing northern states stand to gain. The southern states, which led on population control, stand to lose. Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh all fear being punished for their success. It is becoming one of the sharpest fights in Indian federalism. Now the other house, the council. Here nobody votes for it directly at all. Its seats are filled in 5 strange streams. 1/3 are chosen by local bodies, your municipalities and district councils. 1/12 by graduates. Another 12th by teachers. 1/3 by the members of the assembly themselves, picking people who are not in the assembly. The final 1/6 simply nominated by the governor. Added up, 5/6 indirectly elected, 1/6 nominated, and not a single seat chosen by the ordinary voter. House, nobody quite elects. Which is exactly why, alone among India's legislatures, it can be made to vanish.
Part 3.
Every other legislative chamber in India is permanent in principle. Parliament's 2 houses, the state assembly. You cannot simply abolish them. But the Legislative Council is different. It can be created or destroyed almost at will. Article 169 sets out how, if a state's assembly passes a resolution by a special majority asking for its council to be created or abolished, Parliament can then do exactly that with an ordinary law. No constitutional amendment, no nationwide process. One house votes, the center signs, and a second house is born or buried. Think about what that means. The council's very existence depends on the goodwill of the assembly. It is meant to check. States have used this power like a switch. West Bengal and Punjab abolished their councils in 1969. Pradesh created one in 57, abolished it in 85 and revived it again 2 decades later. Tamil Nadu's story is the strangest of all. It abolished its council in 1986. Then in 2010 it passed a law to bring it back. Then before that new council ever met, before a single member took a seat, the next government passed another resolution to abolish it again. House created and destroyed without ever drawing breath.
Why build something so fragile?
The framers wanted each state free to choose a second chamber according to its own willingness and its own finances, because a second house costs money. Which is why the critics have been brutal, calling the council a costly ornamental luxury, a white elephant, a comfortable refuge for politicians. The voters have already rejected. The two houses even age differently. The assembly lives for 5 years and can be dissolved early to force an election. It is mortal. The council never dies. Like the Rajya Subha, it is a permanent continuing body. 1/3 of its members simply retire every 2 years and fresh ones take their place. It cannot be dissolved. It can only be abolished. So if one house can erase the other, who decides who is even allowed to keep their seat inside them? Part 4. So who can sit in these houses? The bar is simple. You must be a citizen of India and at least 25 years old for the assembly or 30 for the council. You cannot hold an office of profit. You cannot be of unsound mind or an undischarged insolvent, the usual guardrails. But there is one disqualification that has reshaped Indian politics more than any other defection. The rule written into the 10th schedule of the constitution is blunt. If you are elected on one party's ticket and then jump to another, or defy your party on a crucial vote, you can lose your seat. But here is the twist that makes it explosive. The judge of whether you defected is not a court. It is the Speaker of the Assembly or the Chairman of the Council, a presiding officer who almost always belongs to the ruling party. In 1992, the Supreme Court drew one line around that power. The Speaker's decision, it said, can be challenged in court. It is open to judicial review. But the court also called the Speaker a tribunal, the first and main judge of every defection. That is where the trouble begins. Because a speaker who wants to shield a defector has a simple weapon: delay. Sit on the disqualification petition. Don't decide. Run out the clock. Speakers have done exactly this again and again, letting petitions gather dust until the assembly's own term expires and the question dies with it. So in recent years, the Supreme Court has pushed back hard, ordering speakers to decide such cases within a reasonable time, roughly 3 months, and even asking Parliament whether the speaker should hold this power at all or whether it belongs with an independent body. A sword meant to stop horse trading, held by a referee who often plays for one of the teams. That speaker holds two decisive powers above all: deciding the fate of the defectors and deciding with the final word whether a bill is a money bill. Hold on to that second power, because it is about to decide how a law is born. Part 5. So a bill is drafted, a proposed law. How does it actually become one? It moves through each house in 3 stages called readings: introduced, debated clause by clause, then voted on as a whole. In a state with 2 houses, both must agree before it can go further. That sounds equal. It is not, because when the 2 houses disagree, the constitution has already decided who wins. Take an ordinary bill passed by the assembly and sent to the council. The council can pass it, amend it, reject it, or simply sit on it. But none of that is fatal. At most, the council can delay the bill for about 4 months, 3 the first time, 1 the second. After that, the assembly simply passes the bill a second time and it becomes law, whether the council likes it or not. There is no joint sitting of the 2 houses to break the deadlock, the way there is in Parliament. The council cannot win. It can only slow things down. Which is why it is called not a revising chamber but a dilatory one, a speed bump, not a stop sign. On the things that matter most, money and power, the council is weaker still. A money bill cannot even begin in the council. It starts in the assembly on the governor's recommendation. Once passed, the council gets just 14 days and it cannot reject or amend it, only suggest and be ignored. Whether a bill even counts as a money bill, that is decided finally by the speaker. The council may discuss the budget but never vote on it. It can never bring the government down because the ministry answers to the assembly alone. So a bill clears the houses. One last gate remains, and it is one we have met before. The governor, Article 200, the governor can assent, withhold, return the bill or reserve it for the president. The very same fork that 2 chapters ago dragged that office into the Supreme Court. Only after that signature does a bill finally become a law of the state. So this is the state legislature, a house divided where the directly elected assembly is supreme and the second chamber is a pause, not a power. Remember 5 things. 2 houses deeply unequal, 1 elected, 1 mostly not, a council that can be abolished, a speaker who judges defection, and a lawmaking contest. The assembly always wins. But a law passed here does not end here. It can be challenged, read, and struck down in a courtroom. Next time, chapter 34. The High Court.